for the team it was very intense time because we had, I don't know, 30 games or something like this, and it was crazy. It's the first time of my life I have so many games, because in Spain, for example, in second division you have a lot of games, but not like this. Every 3 days is very difficult, but it's a very good and nice experience to play in this team, in conference, also in Pujar, everything, I don't know, it was very nice. And personal, I felt very good, especially in the beginning of the season, after I had the problem in the calf, and this, it was difficult to come back and to get the level again. But I think now we have a lot of time to be better physically, so to prepare, and I think it will be very good again. It's better when you are not alone, the only guy who is new on the team. But I think the way we play, it's good for me and good for the players who come to the team. So it was easier because of this, and especially after in the personal way. Also, it was easier because sometimes you need time to be yourself with everyone, and when you have a lot of new teammates, it's better because you are like with the other ones, going yourself for krok po kroku. There are a lot of things about, for example, the way that we play in Spain. For example, players who is playing on second division. In Spain, second division is very physical, very tactic. You don't have space, very aggressive all the time. It's difficult to see a game 2-2. It's always 0-1, 1-1, 1-0. It's difficult to be creative and playing, but I think now in Jagiellonia it's much easier to be that kind of player, because the way we play is for this kind of players. And I don't know, about the weather, it's true, it's difficult. Sometimes it's a little depressing because we come from Spain, and for example now in winter is at 6 p.m. is still sunny sometimes, so, and in Białystok at 3 p.m. is is already dark, but I think this is not the most important. The most important is the environment. Białystok is not a city to lose your mind, only focus on football, and I think this is a very good thing to us to play there. I know I had a lot of important moments because, for example, game against Piast, game against Vitsev, I made the assists. Against Petrokuk also, I entered on the pitch and we won. I know my role in the team. I think maybe I will not play every game from starting 11. I know it, but I know that I can be important also. So yes, the last month especially, it was difficult mentally because I was we were together in traveling and all of this, without families, without seeing my girlfriend and my dog and my parents, everything. And of course it's difficult because sometimes you play, sometimes you don't play, and sometimes you don't understand why it's happening or something, and you need sometimes to speak with someone. And yes, sometimes it's difficult to find the person or I don't know, someone to talk about this, but I think we'll be better. In a very short period of time, I had to think about all of these things, and sometimes it's not easy. And I think I'm a mature person and I can accept it, but it's still very difficult to leave some situations and think about, 4 years ago or 3 years ago I was in Spain in 4th league or 3rd league, and I was thinking about or dreaming about these kind of moments, and now I'm living it. And sometimes I didn't even enjoy the moment because it was very, very big emotions. And I don't know, I think in football, especially in this kind of runs with a lot of games, you need to improve your mentality so quickly, and sometimes you don't have time to think and view for your past, to retrospective, or I don't know if it's good or. And I think this will be with the time, and yes, of course it's difficult because sometimes you have more confidence, less confidence, but I don't know, it's amazing. And for me, that game on Białystok, it was like a reward. Maybe not for what I did last year, because this is for Jaga, not for me. But this is a reward for my life, my entire life. And in the moment we are playing, I'm not thinking about Henderson or nobody. I'm thinking about playing as best as I can. And a lot of times, even not thinking, only doing things because it's the best way that you can show yourself. But I think the cue is after the game and days before the game, that you put on big picture what you did, and I think this is crazy. Well, I think these kind of games are very important for the team and for the club, because, as I told you, it's a reward for the work that they made the last year. And it's very difficult to play against these kind of teams because they are on the papers they are much better than you, and you know it, and the normal is lose. But I think the joy of the moment and the preparation before the games and all of this are crucial to make something big and to enjoy the game, because of course we lost that games, but I think the people, especially players, we enjoyed a lot playing against this kind of teams, because maybe a few months ago you thought and it was impossible. The other team didn't know us and didn't expect that we were so good, because we were much better than them almost all the game. We didn't suffer almost, and I think this was a surprise for them, probably because previous games against these big teams prepare us for this kind of games. So I think the mentality also, it was the first game in conference, everything was together to make this great thing. Sometimes it's hard, but I think the good way of playing after 3 days is that you can't disconnect and you are like in tension all the time. So you don't have time to think about what you did, because the next game is after tomorrow. So I think this is the good part of playing after 3 days. But yes, of course, sometimes it's if you win against a huge team, maybe your ego goes up and someone needs to punch you on the face and say, hey, you are the same than 2 weeks ago, so relax. But I think on the team we have very good personalities. The coach also make relativity all the time, like put it on perspective, and this kind of work I think is crucial for after be ready for the next games. This kind of mentality comes because we did a great job before, so you expect that we will keep it, and sometimes it's very difficult to keep it. because it was last game of the round. We were also very tired, physically and mentally, especially. And I think this, for sure, I would sign the same in summer to be ninth in qualification, and probably everyone in Jagiellonia. But of course, it was a pity also, because we deserved something more, I think. But this is football. Yeah, for me, it's difficult to play a lot of games, but for me the worst is the logistic, of course, because we don't have airport. If we would have airport in Białystok, would be much easier. But this is what it is, and we need to think that it cannot be so. But for me, the most difficult was the logistics, because it was a lot of time on the road and with planes, and sometimes it's difficult because you don't sleep good. After you need to train and the train is not good, and this for the mental is bad because your confidence go low. So I think there is a lot of things that maybe to improve, but it's very difficult to improve these kind of things because it doesn't depend on us. 2 years ago I finished in Krakow my degree in business administration, and then here in Białystok online I did a master for being director of economy in a company. And for example, investing, I like it since the COVID, since the pandemic. And I started to read about it, and I started to invest in index funds and in stocks, after Bitcoin also, some cryptos and something like this. And I really like it because, well, first of all, I love YouTube. I watch YouTube since probably I was 15, about personal growth, economics, business, mentality, a lot of podcasts. I like it to consume this kind of things, and I wanted to try also to speak about, for example, what I like, that is economics. And I think this is very important for the football players, because I see every day in the locker rooms someone is talking about, my personal assistant told me to invest in this, and I think, do you understand it? And sometimes they don't understand what are they doing. And for me, the most important is understanding what are you doing with your money, because we have a very good opportunity in football to make good money, and after this maybe you can retire for your life, or maybe you can work in something that you like, but because you want, not because you need. And for me, this is very important to teach people how to think about money and give importance to the money in football, because with 18 years old you are not prepared to take the money and put it on index funds or in a house or something like this that is most intelligent, and someone do it for you and you don't understand what is he doing, and it's sometimes it's not so good. So I want to maybe improve this part of mentality for the players, and I think I'm enjoying, so it's good.